You see, one of the biggest lies we've been told, especially as men, is that being overly nice, agreeable, and constantly available win a woman's respect. That if you're always showing up, always texting first, always saying yes, somehow that makes you more lovable. But let's be honest, how often has that actually worked in your favor? More often than not, the opposite happens. The more you bend over backward to please, the more invisible you become. The truth is, respect is earned not through niceness, but through authenticity, grounded self-worth, and unwavering standards. When you're operating from a place of people pleasing, what you're really doing is seeking validation. You're hoping that if you're good enough, she'll finally notice your value. But let's call that out for what it really is: performing. And women can feel it. They may not say it directly, but they sense when your niceness is conditional, when it's being used as a currency to get something in returning affection, attention, validation. And that's when the respect evaporates. Respect is rooted in strength, not submission. It's about being firm, not forceful. It's about being kind, but not spineless. You can be a good man without being a doormat. You can show care and empathy without abandoning your values. The key is to move through life from a place of internal authority, not external approval. What makes a man truly respected by women is when he knows who he is and refuses to compromise that just to be liked. That man doesn't try to be agreeable at the expense of truth. He doesn't go out of his way to accommodate someone who hasn't earned it. And that's the point. Respect comes from being the kind of man who demands it by the way he lives, the way he moves, and the way he makes decisions, not by how many flowers he sends or how fast he replies to texts. Have you ever noticed how women tend to lean in more the man who seems slightly unavailable, a bit mysterious, and deeply grounded in his own reality? It's not because he's being disrespectful or playing games. It's because his attention feels earned. He doesn't give it out to everyone. And that scarcity creates value. That contrast is what flips a switch in a woman's mind. Wait, why isn't he falling over himself like the others? What does he know that they don't? It's that quiet confidence, that calm inner certainty that triggers a different kind of interest, one built on respect. Tom, the forts women, not pity or convenience. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to argue to prove you're right. And you certainly don't need to chase anyone to feel like you matter. You just need to decide that your self-worth is non-negotiable. And from that place, everything changes. Your posture, your energy, your tone. Women can feel when a man is rooted in something real. It's magnetic, it's compelling, and yes, it commands respect. So stop trying to be liked and start being real. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Say no when you mean it. Don't overextend to win someone over. You're not here to earn love by erasing your backbone. You're here to be the kind of man whose presence speaks before he even opens his mouth. Respect doesn't come from being nice. It comes from being you unapologetically and unshakably. If there's one thing that separates men who are respected from those who are merely tolerated, it's their ability to set boundaries, and more importantly, to enforce them calmly, not with aggression, not with yelling, but with quite certainty. Because when a man knows where he stands and what he will or will not tolerate, he doesn't need to convince anyone. His actions speak louder than his emotions ever could. You see, boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about protecting yourself. They are the invisible lines that tell the world, this is who I am, and this is how I expect to be treated. And the truth is, women are drawn to that kind of clarity when a man can communicate his limits without getting defensive, without breaking character. It tells her one thing loud and clear: this man respects himself. Too often, men think setting boundaries will make them look mean or unkind. So they bite their tongues. They let things slide. They let disrespectful behavior go unchecked, hoping it won't happen again. But it always does. Because people, including women, test boundaries, not maliciously, but naturally. And if you let those small red flags fly by without addressing them, you're teaching her how to treat you. A woman may not always agree with your boundaries. She might even push back on them. But deep down, she'll respect you more for having them than for trying to keep the peace at your own expense. It's not about being rigid. It's about being consistent. When you say what you mean and follow through, even in uncomfortable moments, you establish emotional security. And emotional security is the foundation of respect. Imagine this: you're dating someone and she constantly cancels last minute, always has an excuse, and expects you to be okay with it. Now, you have a choice. You could shrug it off, hoping things improve. Or you could calmly say, I value my time, and I expect people I spend it with to value it too. If this pattern continues, I'll choose to step back. That statement doesn't require raised voices or emotional outbursts. It's firm, direct, and rooted in self-worth. And here's the powerful thing. When you start enforcing boundaries like that, you don't need to chase respect. It comes to you. 4 traits, women. Because now you're not playing the nice guy game. You're showing that while you can care deeply, you also care about yourself enough to walk away from anything that chips away at your dignity. There's nothing weak about compassion. But respect doesn't thrive in the absence of accountability. You can still be warm, generous, and giving. But those things only have real value when they're backed by standards. Otherwise, you're just being nice out of fear, not strength. So the next time you're tempted to let something slide to, keep the peace. Ask yourself, what am I really keeping? Peace or pretense? The strongest men are not those who dominate others, but those who master themselves. And that mastery starts with knowing where you draw the line and standing by it every single time. Because when you can calmly enforce your boundaries without apology, you send a clear message to the world: I don't need to control anyone. I just won't be controlled. And that quiet conviction, that's the kind of strength women don't just notice it, they respect deeply. There's a quiet power in a man who knows where he's going. A man who's not swayed by every opinion, not distracted by every woman who smiles at him, and not moved by the need to be liked. That power is purpose. And when a man is purpose-driven, not validation-seeking, everything about him shifts. His energy, his posture, his decisions. He becomes the kind of man women respect without question, because he's not looking to them to tell him who he is. Too many men spend their lives waiting for someone to notice them, to approve of them, to give them permission to be confident. They scroll for attention, dress for compliments, talk to impress, and live to be liked. But here's the truth no one tells you. When your value depends on how others see you, you will constantly shrink yourself to fit into whatever mold you think will make them happy. That's not power. That's performance. A purpose-driven man doesn't wake up wondering who's going to validate him today. He wakes up focused on the mission, whether that mission is building his career, growing spiritually, improving his health, or simply becoming a better version of himself. His attention is inward, not outward. He's not chasing acceptance, he's creating impact. And that energy, it's magnetic. You want to know why certain men walk into a room and immediately command attention without saying a word. It's not always looks or status. It's alignment. It's the sense that this man is not here for approval. He's here for something bigger. He's on a path, and anyone who joins him is welcome, but he's not stopping to convince anyone to walk beside him. That sense of direction, that inner focus, it draws people in, especially women, because women respect men who have vision, who don't just exist but live with intention. Now, let's be clear, being purpose-driven doesn't mean you ignore women or act detached for the sake of appearing cool. It simply means you've built a life so full, so meaningful, that her presence is a bonus, not your lifeline. You're not acting out of scarcity. You're choosing from abundance. And when you choose a woman, not because you need her for his women, but because you genuinely want her to walk with you on your journey, she feels that difference. She respects that difference. There's a huge distinction between wanting connection and needing validation. One empowers you, the other enslaves you. And when you're enslaved to external approval, you'll find yourself bending your values, shrinking your opinions, and abandoning your purpose just to keep someone interested. But that kind of relationship doesn't lead to respect. It leads to resentment. From both sides, women watch how you spend your time, how you carry yourself when no one is watching, whether you follow through on your words. And they can sense when your purpose is real or just a performance to seem attractive. True purpose speaks without you having to sell it. So let your actions do the talking. Let your consistency prove your direction. Let your focus tell the world that you are not here to be liked. You are here to live fully, boldly, and without apology. Because when a man stands rooted in his purpose, he stops needing the world to clap for him. And that quiet confidence, that sense of mission, it's not just attractive, it's deeply, undeniably respected. There's a certain kind of man who doesn't need to say much, but when he speaks, people lean in, not because he's loud, not because he's trying to dominate the room, but because his words carry weight. His presence fills the space before his voice even arrives. That's the power of saying less and meaning more. And it's one of the most underrated paths to true respect. We live in a time where everyone is talking, explaining, defending, over-expressing, trying to prove a point to be seen. But there's something magnetic about a man who chooses his words carefully, who doesn't rush to speak, and who allows silence to do some of the heavy lifting. That man isn't hiding, he's intentional, and intention speaks louder than volume ever could. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to justify your boundaries, your standards, or your values. When you're solid in who you are, You don't argue, you observe, you beg, you decide. That doesn't mean you're cold or emotionally unavailable. It means you've realized that your energy is precious and not everyone needs access to it. In relationships, especially, men often fall into the trap of overtalking to maintain connection. Constant texting, constant explanations, constant apologies for things they didn't even do, all in an attempt to seem thoughtful or emotionally available. But here's the truth. When everything is said, nothing stands out. And when you're always explaining yourself, you're subconsciously communicating that your words alone aren't enough, that your presence isn't enough. But it is. When you learn how to wield it with power, women don't want a man who never speaks. They want a man who speaks with purpose, a man who listens more than he talks, who responds instead of reacts, who takes time before he gives his opinion, not because he's unsure, but because he's thoughtful. And when he does speak, it's not about getting attention. It's about shifting the energy in the room. That kind of speech leaves a lasting impression. It creates respect without effort. It's in the way you say no with needing to explain why. It's in the way you make contact and let silence hang for a moment before you respond. It's in the way you don't try to fill awkward gaps with meaningless words. Because you're not uncomfortable with silence. You're not uncomfortable with yourself. That level of calm, of self-assurance is rare. And what's rare is respected. Think about it. Some of the most respected men in history weren't the ones who spoke the most. They were the ones whose words, though few, cut through the noise. They were men of action, men of consistency, men whose yes meant yes and whose no didn't waver. They didn't need to sell themselves with speeches. Their presence did the talking. And the more aligned you are with your values, your purpose, and your inner authority, the less you'll feel the need to explain yourself to anyone. So let your life be the loudest statement you make. The four traits, women, let your actions be clear enough that your words are just confirmation. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't earned by how much you say, it's earned by how much weight your silence carries. One of the most powerful things a man can realize is that not every woman deserves access to him. Just because someone is beautiful, charming, or shows interest doesn't mean they've earned a seat at your table. Being selective isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. And when a man understands that when he stops treating his time, energy, and attention as if they're for sale to the highest bidder, something shifts. He no longer chases, he chooses. And women can feel that difference. So many men have been conditioned to believe that they should be grateful for any attention they receive from a woman. That if she gives them the time of day, they need to prove themselves worthy. But that mindset flips the natural order of attraction. Because the moment you start working for approval you haven't even signed she's earned, you begin to lose your value in her eyes. What was once curiosity turns into control. What was once mystery becomes overexposure. And what once masculine strength dissolves into desperate validation seeking. Being selective means you understand your worth. It means you've done the inner work to know that your attention is a gift, not a given. That your time, your peace of mind, your presence, and your effort are valuable. And not just to be handed over because someone showed you a little interest. It's easy to be flattered, but it's much harder and far more powerful to look past the surface and ask, is this woman truly aligned with my values, my direction, my peace? Respect grows when a woman senses that she's not entitled to your presence just because she's attractive, that she has to show up with more than a pretty face. She has to bring character, integrity, loyalty, and emotional maturity. And if she doesn't get access. It's that simple, not because you're playing games or acting cold, but because you respect yourself too much to entertain anything that doesn't match the energy you give. And let's be honest, what comes too easily is rarely valued. When a woman doesn't have to invest, doesn't have to prove herself, doesn't have to earn your consistency, your presence loses impact. But when she knows that your time is earned, not expected, she shows up differently. She listens more, respects more, and values the connection with more depth. Because now she understands this man has standards. Some men fear being selective because they think it'll leave them lonely. But the truth is, being alone and being lonely are not the same. A man who is at peace with himself, who has purpose, vision, and clear boundaries, is never truly alone. He's surrounded by meaning. He's building something. He's becoming something. And the right woman, one who recognizes and respects that, is not repelled by his standards. She's drawn to them because deep down, she wants to know the man she's with doesn't just say yes to anyone. When you stop handing out access to every woman who smiles at you, you stop living for external approval and start living with internal alignment. You send a message, not just to women, but to yourself, that you're a man who values quality over quantity. A man who's not afraid to walk alone until the right one shows up. And that's strength, that discipline. It's not only respected, it's unforgettable. One of the most defining traits of a man who commands respect is his ability to walk away when it's no longer being given. Not with bitterness, not with drama, just with calm, quiet strength. Because at some point, you have to understand that staying in situations where you're being disrespected doesn't make you patient or loyal. It makes you forget who you are. Too often, men stay where they are not valued. They tolerate dismissive words, emotional manipulation, inconsistent effort, or outright disregard, all in the name of love, attraction, or hope that things will get better. But here's the thing, every time you accept less than, you teach the other perspective that it's okay to treat you that way. And over time, you start to believe it too. You shrink. You second guess yourself. You operate from fear instead of confidence. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. Walking away is not about proving a point. It's about proving to yourself that you know your worth. It's about choosing your peace over chaos, your growth over stagnation, and your dignity over desperation. When respect is absent, staying becomes a form of self-betrayal. And the moment you allow that pattern to continue, it becomes a cycle. A loop of disappointment, frustration, and unspoken resentment. You don't have to fight to be seen. You don't have to beg to be heard. You don't have to convince anyone to value. Your energy is too precious to waste in spaces where you're tolerated instead of celebrated. If you're constantly explaining why you deserve basic decency, you're already in the wrong place. A woman who truly sees you will not need constant reminders to respect you. She will offer it naturally because she recognizes the man in front of her. And when she doesn't, you leave. You leave not because you're trying to hurt her, but because you refuse to hurt yourself by staying. That silent exit, that refusal to tolerate anything that chips away at your self-respect, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. It says, I'm not here to force anything. I'm not here to be tolerated. I'm here to be respected. And if I can't have that, I'll create distance and keep my peace intact. That kind of emotional discipline is rare. Most people chase closure, explanations, or one last chance. But when you're grounded in who you are, you don't need all that. Tradeswoman, you know that peace is not found in another person. It's found in your ability to protect your own energy. And the truth is, walking away from the wrong situation opens the door for the right one. One built on mutual value, not constant compromise. People respect what they can't manipulate. And when you show that your self-worth is not negotiable, that you're willing to stand alone rather than stay in disrespect, everything changes. You stop attracting chaos and start commanding peace. You stop chasing love and start drawing in people who match your frequency. So if you ever find yourself in a space where respect is no longer present, don't argue, don't beg, don't prove. Just leave. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to know what you deserve. And in that moment of silence, when your absence is louder than your words ever were, that's when your value echoes the loudest. At the heart of everything we've talked about today lies one undeniable truth. Respect is not something you chase. It's something you command, and you command it not through niceness, performance, or validation seeking, but through grounded self-respect, clear boundaries, purpose-driven living, and emotional discipline. A man who is selective, intentional, and unafraid to walk away is a man who never has to beg for recognition. He becomes the standard. You don't need to prove yourself through words. You prove it through how you live, how you move, and how you respond when tested. When you stop being nice just to be accepted and start being real to be respected, everything shifts. Women feel it. The world feels it. And most importantly, you feel it. So be the man who doesn't just talk about respect. Be the man who lives in a way that makes it non-negotiable.